thank you everyone for coming along to speak at the AJL Profitability Hub second edition. Today we're going to look at technology and rebuilding trust and consumer confidence in the short-term rental industry. And I have four of you here. Just to sort of begin kicking off this, this call, I'd like you to introduce yourselves, your businesses, and just tell us a little bit about where you've been experiencing lockdown over this, over the last few weeks. And Michael, would you like to start?
Sure, yeah. I'm Michael DRIEDGER. I'm the CEO of OPERTO Guest Technologies. We're a software company that connects IoT devices like smart locks and thermostats and sensors through to a dashboard, which then connects through to your PMS. It's basically built for property managers, but it also helps enhance the guest experience. In Vancouver, where I am, we've been very, very fortunate, very similar to New Zealand. I think we had all of 2 cases this week in the whole province. So basically businesses have started opening up. Travel's starting to increase. All of the restaurants are open. I tried to go to a restaurant yesterday. It was an hour-long lineup outside. Good luck getting a haircut. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy about that. So that's the situation in Vancouver anyway.
Thanks, Michael. Your hair looks totally fine.
My wife cut my hair.
Oh, good, good. Alex, how about you?
Thanks for having me, Jessica. I'm Alex Nick. I'm founder and CEO of Properly. I'm currently locked down in San Francisco. I started 2.5 months ago in New Zealand, now locked down in San Francisco. I've got a ton of optimism of where this is heading. I just dropped my partner, Tammy, off at the airport yesterday, and I saw 2 guys walk out of the airport terminal. One said to the other, "Do you think it's safe to take my face mask off so I can smoke a cigarette?" So clearly, I think clearly we're on the path to recovery. Properly is a quality management and certification platform. So we work with property managers as well as listing platforms and local tourist promotion boards to help them give guests peace of mind that it's safe to stay in the accommodations that we provide.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alex. And Humphrey, it looks like you're enjoying our sort of UK heat wave today. But can you tell me about you, your business, and what you've been doing over the last few weeks, or where you've been?
Thanks, Jess. So I'm Humphrey and I'm co-founder of GUARDHOG Technologies. We're a data-driven intelligence business focused on insurance, trust, safety and security in the short-term rental sector. And I've been enjoying lockdown and the early push of summer in Somerset at home, along with 2 dogs, 2 kids, my wife Hattie, and we've got a lockdown cat. So we've had a little new addition over the last 6 weeks. And anything to help keep the kids entertained.
Great. Did you say Somerset?
Yes, in Somerset.
I'm in Bath in Somerset.
Oh, so we're 30 minutes away.
Okay, great. And we also got a lockdown rabbit for the same reasons. Jeremy, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about BREEZEWAY and where you've been?
Sure. My name is Jeremy Gall. I'm the founder, CEO of BREEZEWAY. We're a property operations platform to help professional operators in the vacation rental space deliver great experiences at the property, how they prepare the property, make sure it's clean, safe, really high quality experience for the guests. And we do that for lots of folks all around the world. I've been in quarantine in South Carolina, with my wife, who also cut my hair, and 4 children. So we don't need any new additions. So we haven't gotten a cat or a dog or a rabbit. We've got our hands quite full. But things are going really well. And, I think it's really good. By the time this airs, we're recording a little bit in advance, right? But we're seeing the recovery happen right in front of our eyes right now as every market opens up and the pent-up demand for travel is palpable.
Absolutely, thank you. And we are seeing that things are, green shoots are happening. I think everybody is sort of seeing a bit of green shoots happening, and it appears certainly like there is some very tentative recovery. And You know, Michael, I'm going to start with you on this one. According to you, what do you think is the keystone of success of building on recovery for short-term rental providers, for property managers?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing as what most really professional property managers were doing before. Which there's a Japanese term which I love, which is omotenashi, which basically means paying attention to details and anticipating guest needs. And so it's been around for a long time. So this basic concept is nothing new. So the property managers that I've seen that have done well even throughout the pandemic are the ones that were good at that. The ones that had really good cleaning regimes, who basically understood that, you know, I'll give you an example. Booking.com did a study where they found that 65% of people before, this is pre-COVID, didn't want to be greeted. They wanted keyless entry, right? So that's anticipating a guest need. They don't want to be greeted. And so you can imagine that's probably going to be the case now. So it's just anticipating those needs. And also just trying to adjust to possibly the new guest type that you have. We've all heard over and over that you know, domestic travel will rebound first. And so data and technology has basically given us great insight and ability to bring in international clients. And we might know those very, very well in the market that we're in, for example. But now you'll have to adjust to really knowing who the locals that you have to attract now to come. And definitely, especially, you also have to think of your teams, right? Like your cleaning teams. I think even before this, the two most important things any property manager was trying to manage was guests and cleaners. Cleaners are like gold. Like a good cleaner's like gold. And so just keeping them safe, keeping them, you know, motivated, keeping them doing, you know, the good things they need to do. Those are always going to be keystone.
Thank you. And Alex, you know, cleaning is a big part of Properly. Is there something you'd like to add to this question? You know, what is a keystone of success for property managers?
I think right now the key to success is restoring peace of mind. So I think that's peace of mind directed at three audiences. Number one, peace of mind for the guest. So they know that where they stay safe. So that means that we're transparent and clear about what is being done at the property, that we are raising the bar as an industry. And for every property manager to showcase like how exactly they guarantee that safety for their guests. I think the second constituency is peace of mind for the owner. They're entrusting their property to us, so they have to have peace of mind that we're taking care of it properly, that that we are making sure that their liability is managed properly, that the cleaners are safe, the guests are safe. And then thirdly, of course, we have to take care of the cleaners. We have to make sure that they're safe. We also have to make sure that we give them all the skills and the requirements so they can operate in this new world, which is a very, very different world from what we operated in. It's not just about keeping things clean. We have tons of professionals out there that are very, very good at keeping things clean. Now it's about keeping things safe. And, you know, there's a big difference between cleaning and disinfection. There's skills that comes with it. There's certifications that come with it. And we need to make sure that we have those processes in place so everybody is equipped for this new world. And that's very much what we focus on. I think it's an issue of raising the bar across the industry. And I think it's an issue of being much, much more explicit and transparent about it. I just sort of reviewed what happened in the last 3 weeks. Just the last 3 weeks, we had, I think, 36 major branded cleaning programs emerge. No one has ever talked about cleaning. Like that's something that's taken for granted. Now, every company under the sun, from Marriott to Hyatt to every hotel chain, of course, Airbnb, Booking.com, Vrbo, Verma, every association, every country, Portugal, Spain, is releasing branded cleaning programs. And I think it very much speaks to the fact that guests want certainty, owners want certainty, and cleaners want certainty that they're safe.
Thank you. And I guess it's communicating what you're doing as well. Is that trust?
It's absolutely right. It has to be transparent. It has to be clear.
Yeah, great. And I mean, you all provide tech solutions, different tech solutions for property managers in order for them to provide, you know, great product service for their customers. How you know, I'm going to give this one to Jeremy. How can technology reinforce the trust that that humans need to have in order to kind of ease that anxiety about travel and get that customer confidence back in travel? And, you know, obviously travel, that's kind of a big answer. Travel, you know, there's a lot of trust that needs to go back into travel, but in terms of short-term rentals and the technology that you provide, how's that trust come in?
Sure. I think I might take a contrarian view here, which is that, you know, I think you look at the booking numbers across, you know, Europe and the United States, and the trust is there, right? I mean, you talk to most property managers, and I bet Airbnb probably won't release their booking numbers right now, but you know, my bet, I'd put a lot of money that Airbnb is seeing booking numbers that are probably close to May 2019 right now. So I would say that the spotlight is on cleaning, and people don't always talk about it, but they don't talk about it because there's always an perception that you're going to show up and it's going to be clean, and we shouldn't have to talk about it, right? And this goes back to what Michael was saying, that there are professionals who do this really, really well, and they're going to continue to do things really, really well. So I think it's a little more, and again, this is slightly contrarian, I think it's a little more 10% change in the operations, 100% change in the marketing and how you communicate that. And I think technology helps you do that, right? Technology, our tools help you sort of make sure that you can communicate that to the guest. But really what it should be more about is you should be able to say, look, my properties are really clean and safe for you to come. Don't worry about it. We're using technology in the background that you don't really need to concern yourself with as a guest or even as the owner, because we've got this. This is why you're with a professional operator. And I think that's the real difference. It's about professional operation, whether you have one property or 100. And that's really what's going to drive it. And that's where we see ourselves inserting ourselves, that like, we will help you on the quality spectrum to be better and better. And technology is key to doing that, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. I've long thought that one of the problems with the industry is the way it talks about itself, and it's that getting that professionalism out there. You know, there's a difference between the professional property managers and, you know, perhaps the hobbyist property managers or hosts. And Humphrey, you have a different product that instills trust, you know, for within the industry. Do you want to answer this? Or is there any other factors that we need to be looking at in order to kind of ease that anxiety that may be happening?
I mean, I think that trust is always becoming one of the biggest friction points of bookings again, where guests need instant answers about how safe properties they're booking is going to be. And, you know, simply, as I think everyone's alluding to, technology can build trust bridges between all these parties pretty seamlessly. And, you know, really, for me, this is the moment when we must try and fix the relationship between apprehension and need. And, you know, neither the short stay sector nor technology is going away. That is very clear. And, you know, the marriage of the two holds enormous potential for the sector's good and advancement on virtually every single level. And, you know, you've got to remember that really technology is the universal language that is building communities and bringing people together and actually actualizing ideas and potential. So, you know, as an industry, I think our priority must be not to rebuild trust, because I don't think trust has gone away. It's much more about using the technology to make our own individual home sharing activities more transparent in order to identify the 2% of users who abuse the system. And it's by identifying successfully those 2% that we can build a more sustainable community in the long term.
Do you see any other, I don't know if someone else wants to answer this, but are there any other factors or challenges that maybe have kind of gone under the radar with coronavirus that are still relevant in terms of, you know, how technology can help grow that trust? Yeah, Michael?
I mean, there's so many, right? Like, like to my point earlier, and I think also to Humphrey's point, technology has always helped us, right? Like the food delivery, DoorDash, Uber Eats, all that stuff, very, very popular pre-COVID, unbelievably popular now. especially dropped right outside your door, right? Vacation rental, whatever the case may be. So these things have already started to enhance our ability to service guests' needs and anxieties and that kind of thing. And I think to the point of like the 63% of people wanting keyless, that was anxiety even before this, right? Anxiety of, you know, are they going to be there to greet me? Are they going to be there? Like they're worried, right? They're worried that they can't get in. Now the worry's slightly changed, but essentially all of the same things exist as problems. So for me, one of the biggest ones for me is air quality. Air quality matters, I think, to all of us, right? You know, we have to breathe air. We spend 90% of our time indoors. And most of the time, the reason we have cold and flu season is because that's the time we're spending most of our time indoors, right? Like we don't really talk about this. And the reason that it spreads the fastest at this time of year is because most people are inside and we're overwhelmingly heating spaces, which means that the air ends up extremely dry. And cold and flu viruses are airborne at less than 40% relative humidity. So that's one aspect of air quality that really matters. It mattered before, mattered post-COVID. So humidity is very important. CO2 is really important for a good night's rest. It's really important because it feels like a very stuffy space. We use it to detect how many people are in a space because we all breathe it out at a constant rate. But it's a great measure of how healthy and comfortable a space is. Even measuring chemicals, right? Like now you think you've got cleaners that may be mixing new disinfectants. You know, you want to make sure chemically that everyone's safe there as well. And I'm sure guests are wondering, what kind of chemicals are people cleaning and disinfecting with? I know I've heard this from a lot of people. Like they've seen pictures of those sprayers coming around inside of a unit. What's in that, right? Like there are questions, and there'll be just as much anxiety, I think, with some of the attempts to do cleaning as there is in trying to ease the anxiety.
Yeah, and I mean, it's Jess, you know, at Superhog, we define trust as confident reliance on someone when you are in a position of vulnerability. And I think, you know, what we're seeing is when guests turn up at a property, they are the ones in a position of vulnerability. And what we need to be able to help owners demonstrate are those steps that they've taken in order to make the apartment safe, and then have enough buy-in from different people in the industry to actually, you know, be able to uphold those as that professional standard. Yeah,
I think that, if I could, I think that's a really interesting word, that vulnerability. And, you know, really, when you think about it from a consumer standpoint, how do consumer brands develop trust? It's predictability, right? If you believe that the experience is predictable, then you trust what's going to happen next. And the hotel experience is relatively predictable. You know what's going to happen when you get to a hotel. And I think the larger highlight of what's happening with COVID-19 is that it's shown a spotlight on alternative accommodations, vacation rentals, short-term rentals, to say, hey, wait a second. This is it's always been this unique and amazing category because of its unique characteristics and its fragmented nature. But what that also highlights is a real lack of predictability. And I think the macro trend that's going to happen after this with COVID-19 is, hey, look, we don't want guests to feel vulnerable. We want them to trust. If you really want them to trust the product, it's got to be predictable. And I think we'll see across the board. That's why the hobbyists will sort of disappear. Professional operators will move to the front because they can deliver a predictable experience.
So
Alex.
If I can jump in really quickly on this, in terms of what we've overlooked, I agree with 95% of what Jeremy said. There is going to be a push towards professionalization. I think as an industry, you've got to be super, super careful, because Jeremy and I and the rest of the people who have worked very, very closely in the industry, we know how professional some of the operators are, but that doesn't apply to the entire industry. And the rest of the industry it's all over the place. You know, there's 7 million amateur hosts out there that follow no standard. And I think the thing that we're all overlooking is there's the regulators that are getting involved. I think we had a couple of brushes. I mean, in the US, we saw it in Florida. It doesn't take very much for a regulator that doesn't have a clear understanding of the space to jump in and take the wrong decisions. And it's very, very easy for us as an industry to all be brushed to all be taught with the same brush. So I think it's incumbent on us. We have to raise standards across the entire industry. If we don't, we really, really run a big risk that we will get punished, like the entire industry gets punished for a perception that we create because of the actions of a few, or in the case of amateur hosts, of many. So I think we can't just close our eyes and say the professional operators are going to get this right and have been getting this right for a long time, where Jeremy is absolutely right. We have to remember that that might not be that apparent to the outside observer. So as an industry, you have to elevate standards for everyone. We have to have transparency and we have to have clear standards. And it has to work across the amateur hosts too, because regulators don't necessarily understand the difference.
We won't go with, thank you very much, Alex. We won't talk about associations here because Nicholas and Simon are doing a panel with associations, and they'll be looking and talking about all of those aspects, because it is, it's fascinating, the opportunities, but also the challenges that this industry faces for all those reasons. But moving on, we're hearing quite a lot, and I have to say mostly internally from the vacation rental industry, that vacation rentals are best suited potentially post-pandemic for guests and for meeting those needs, not having a shared elevator or shared, services that you might have in a hotel, that kind of thing, bigger space. But what do you, and you guys have sort of touched on it quite a bit already, but is there anything else that could damage the perception that we hope is out there, that vacation rentals are the better choice for travelers moving forwards? Michael, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. So the property managers that we saw that actually did really well, even during COVID, were ones that, they obviously couldn't cater to guests, so they had to cater to medical workers. So a lot of them were in urban centers, and the reason the medical workers preferred them is because there was a space there was an apartment near the hospital with a washer and dryer where they could disinfect everything they had, and they didn't have to go home and potentially, interact with their families. So, it's amenities, right? They're really well suited. That's been, I think, one of the main reasons that people choose a vacation rental as for a family vacation or vacation with a couple of other people. The amenities are generally just, better. A kitchen, knives, so you can dine in, right? It's just all of the things that made vacation rentals attractive before make them even more attractive now. Especially in terms of a getaway. I think what we saw during the pandemic too was people just getting out of the city, right? Going to the countryside and staying in a cottage or, wherever that may have been. So I think that that's what makes it very well suited. But I do agree with Alex that, in some ways I agree. It's just that trying to create standardization in an industry with so much differentiation is really difficult. Even if you look at hotels, there's no standardization. If you go to Hotel A versus Hotel B, they may appear to be the same, but the level of service is totally different. The level of cleaning is totally different. So not even that industry has really gotten that right. We've tried to do it with star systems, but ultimately, I think to Jeremy's point, it's how you market it. If you market very clear what you do and how well you do it, and you do it in a very efficient way, which means you do it, you use tech to enable a lot of the things you do, I think that's more than what you should be thinking about.
And just to if a property manager is using tech to enable them to have a better business, basically, both for themselves, their owners, and their guests, can you talk me through, if I'm a property manager and I'm thinking, right, I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, you know what, I like the sound of what these guys are saying. How do your different products and services all sit together within the tech stack, potentially for a property manager?
Yeah, and I'll speak to everyone else's, and then I'll let them clarify all the things I got wrong about them. For us, we connect to the PMS to allow you to automatically pass a 4-digit code to a guest, so they don't have to worry about how they'll get in. They'll get in that way. They won't have to greet anyone. The cleaning apps like Properly and BREEZEWAY all help to basically manage that experience before they even get there. Make sure that it's properly clean, make sure that they know what's going on. Our system can alert them when the guest leaves, either through them, using a checkout code on the door, etc. And then insurance basically has the ability for you to, insure the stay in various other ways. And the way that GUARDHOG does it, to my knowledge, is to basically do it through the booking systems again. So it's basically automated. So so all of these things, there's not a lot of manual tasks to make sure these happen. They're all very much streamlined through interconnected technologies like the ones that we offer and work with PMSs and OTAs.
Thanks, Michael. Anyone want to add into that, what Michael said?
I think it's a great summary. I think as an industry, again, Jeremy and I had conversations about that just recently. Like interoperability is an absolute key requirement for our industry. Ultimately, people pick and choose, and they'll pick a PMS, and they'll pick a payment solution, and they'll pick a CRM solution. All these pieces need to fit together. And it's still a little bit of the Wild West out there. Most of the systems are reasonably interoperable, but we have to make sure as an industry that that's much, much more transparent, that there's a huge bonus placed on those players that have open standards, that connect with everyone. We also need to make sure, I think, as an industry that the sort of fee structure around that becomes very transparent to the end customer, as in so they understand what they're paying for. Like if they're just paying for the PMS, or if they're then paying again because the additional solutions have to pay the PMS for connectivity. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that everybody can happily interoperate with each other, which I think is exactly the purpose that we need to push as an industry to make sure all of this works.
I was just going to add back to the question, for property managers that are listening to this. I think, something that can easily get lost is hotels have figured this out long ago. If you look at the majority of hotels around the world are running property management software system from Oracle, which is a multi-billion-dollar company, for the front end of their operations, and then in the back end to actually provide service and understand what's happening at the property. They're using, a piece of software from Amadeus, most likely, which is another multi-billion-dollar company, because they figured out long ago that the job of being a really good hospitality provider is really challenging, and you need to optimize these different parts of the business in the same way that hotel is using different software, a different piece of software to greet the guest and to put their name on the TV in the room when you walk in, or to figure out how to get you your key cards, closer to like what OPERTO is doing, or to manage risk with travelers and to understand, plenty of, hospitality insurance products. So I think, for the audience, it really is, now is the time. I think we're all in agreement that we're all in the same sort of soup of technology and enabling property managers and operators to be better at their jobs. And it takes optimizing each one of those pieces if you really want to professionalize.
Absolutely. And really, you can't be an expert at everything, so it's having the different expert tech for the different parts of your business. Humphrey, do you want to add?
Well, I was just going to say, Jess, this is how I see industry standardization, and why I don't think we're going to see the less professional players disappear, because there is such a wealth of technology in this space. It is actually very easy now for anybody to start a very professional property management company, because they have the tools that they need to get going properly. It just takes speaking to a few people, making the right decisions in order to have a full stack property management company.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add to that?
Very true. And I think, and then Jeremiah is probably going to, is probably going to say the same thing, which is we've seen, and I think this is generally what happened 25 years ago. when the industry really started to grow up, which was someone was a very good host and then ended up hosting for 5 other people. And then in 25 years, they had a business of 2,000 properties, and they are unbelievably good at this. Like I said, they don't realize they're practicing omotenashi, but they're unbelievably good at it. So I think that what is happening now is that, to Humphrey's point, he's entirely right. You'll get a lot of really good ones that will start with 5 to 10. We've seen clients grow from 10 to 200 in a very short period of time. And I don't think that's going to stop. And there's definitely going to be those hobbyists. And that's why I agree with Alex. We do need to have some level of like, what is the transparency that we're having in the industry, so that these ones that are pretty good and that are going to grow will continue to grow in a way that sort of meets the professionalization that the industry wants to convey to guests.
And the key thing for us is to provide solutions which enable them to seamlessly connect to make their goal of looking after the guests even better.
The dog, not the cat, Humphrey.
Yeah, well, that's the dog called Rabbit, so a little bit confusing. But no, so like I think these kind of micro entrepreneurs, I think they're brilliant, and I think they play such a crucial part in our market. The difficulty is being able to be agile and flexible enough to allow them to connect to our products and services without them having to be a massive company. And if we're able to succeed and do that, then actually we're able to succeed in bringing predictability, to go back to Jeremy's point, into the market. And if we do predictability, combine that with integrity and transparency and great communication, suddenly we have a much more professional and much more able industry kind of moving forward as one, as our technology improves.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really exciting.
It is. And there are so many really, really smart young property managers out there with young businesses that have done really well up until March 2020. And, you know, hopefully we'll kind of continue to. But Jeremy, did you want to say something on this?
No, I think that's right. I think Humphrey really nailed it. I think that what's interesting is you will see, I guess, to take that point one step further, in a, which I think will accrue benefits to everybody here and to the whole industry. I don't think those micro entrepreneurs will have much of a choice. They will have to. You cannot professionalize without the tools. That's the only thing. Like, the tools will enable them to do it, but doing it on your own without them is a very challenging job. To be really, really good at it, even if you only have one property, and if you're not using software and technology to help you, it's very, very difficult. And it becomes really laborious. And I think, 15 years ago when I was at Flipkey and we were doing this and it was like wide open marketplace, there were lots of people that were real hobbyists, and it was a cottage industry, and it was okay if you showed up and there was no toilet paper, or you brought your own sheets, or the house was kind of dirty, or there was a 10-year-old coffee pot. And I think, now that sort of kitschy, isn't that cute, just isn't really all that cute anymore, because it's kind of, some of it still adds that authenticity. We don't want sterile environments, but really we do want quality. And I think this is just another COVID-19, everything is just another step in this long progression of how do we take this really authentic, unique inventory, mix in high quality into it, and get the best of both worlds. Get this amazing hospitality experience at this unique property that's in such a great location where I can be by myself and cook and enjoy it, et cetera. Like, that's what everybody wants. And, we've just been marching closer and closer to that for years and years. And I think there's no reversing that trend, I guess.
Absolutely. And actually, it's a trend that is not limited to vacation and short-term rentals. Consumer expectations have risen across the board. In everything that we buy and purchase, we expect the best now as consumers.
And I just wanted to, I wildly agree with what Jeremy just said. I wanted to put some numbers around it. If we look at our ecosystem, each of our verticals maybe have a 1% penetration of the current customer base. So, whether that's property care, quality management, certification software, smart home, sort of we're all in this sort of 1% bracket, which means that, sort of at the end of the day, we're one happy family. And what we're really fighting against is the 99%, or not fighting against, the opportunity that we're tackling is the 99% of businesses that do not currently use professional software. And I think that's the huge opportunity. There's going to be a massive push towards professionalization. And exactly as Jeremy says, no one will be able to afford not to do it. So the faster we move, the more we work together as an industry and as an ecosystem, the better it is for the reputation of the industry and the better it's for each of our operations.
Well, thank you all for joining me on this. It's been really great to chat to you, and you've all had some really good things to say, and just can't wait to actually see you guys in person in a real life conference, hopefully, at least in 2021, if not at the end of this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jessica.
And it was great to see everyone. Thanks very much.